Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on. The Day That Will Haunt Me Forever by Soldier of God AI. When I was a police officer, a big part of my job was responding to suicides on the train tracks. People would regularly stand or throw themselves in front of the trains to end their lives. It was often my job to find the body, search the body for ID, pick the body or body parts up, and place it in a body bag ready to be taken to the morgue. I have lost count on how many of these types of jobs I attended. Most of the time, the impact of the train obliterated the body, and I was there picking up pieces of flesh that were indistinguishable. No matter how gruesome each one was, they all have kind of blended into one memory in my mind. Maybe that's a coping mechanism. All except for one. I was working the night shift and got a call on my radio about 3 a.m. to a person struck by a train. My team and I were all sitting in the office at the time. As soon as the call came in, we all jumped up and rushed into the police van. We drove on the dark, quiet roads of London to the train station. None of us said a word to each other the whole way there. It was silent. We were all too busy thinking about what we were potentially walking into, what we were going to see. Once we arrived at the station, I saw the fire brigade there as well as the London ambulance service. Not many people realize it's us police officers that have to pick up these dead bodies. It's us. Unfortunately, it's us. Once the power on the tracks was off, I walked onto the tracks ahead of my team with my torch to look for the body. I remember it being freezing cold and silent. The only noise was my feet hitting the rubble on the train tracks. After a long walk in the pitch black, I saw the body. I approached it to get a closer look, and what I saw has stayed with me ever since, and I don't think the memory will ever leave me. The man's eyes were staring right into my soul. His body was not smashed to pieces like all the jobs I had been to before. Instead, this man had placed his head perfectly on the rail tracks so that the train decapitated his head from the rest of his body. At this point, I waved the rest of my team over. We all kitted up with the correct equipment to do the body recovery. We were all there in the pitch black in our white bodysuits picking up his remains. I was the one who had to pick up his head by his hair and place it with the rest of the body in the body bag. He was still staring into my eyes as I was doing so. Once the body was in the body bag, 4 of us carried the bag on the tracks to get the body out of the station. While we were carrying the body bag, our arms started to get really tired, so I suggested to the team that we all swap sides to give our arms a break. As we gently placed the body bag down, laughter came from the bag. A really high-pitched, slow laugh. The kind of laugh that was laughing right at me. Chills went down my spine. I was so frightened that not only was I speechless, I couldn't even process a thought. I was completely frozen. We all stopped and looked at each other. I just picked up this man's decapitated head. How could he be alive? How could he be laughing at us? I could see the fear on my colleagues' faces, and time seemed to freeze in this moment, and no one knew what to do. Eventually, we opened up the body bag, and whichever officer searched the body didn't see the man's phone that was inside his jacket pocket. The man had received a call from an unknown number, and his ringtone was his laughter, which we found out from family later on. The laughter stays with me till this day, and as a believer of the supernatural, I can't help but think, who made that call? Two is scarier than one. Submitted by T. I live in the Philippines, and here it is common for families to return to their provinces and have their children continue their education there. And that's what happened to me and my sister. We moved back to our province, the marble capital of the Philippines, Romblon, I was about 6 or 7 at that time and continued my elementary until high school in both of our parents' hometowns, Orianging and Luoc. This experience happened in Luoc. In the Philippines, especially in the provinces, the paranormal and the unexplained is a common thing. While I do not personally believe in those things, an event changed my mind forever. During my senior year in high school, I was in my rebellious phase, not thinking about the repercussions of joining the wrong group of friends, not focusing on my studies. I just wanted to be a kid and have fun before going to college. Now, in the part of town where I live, there have been rumors of creatures like the aswang, tikbalang, and other mythical creatures you will only hear from Filipino movies. Well, I didn't believe those things and went on to continue being the stubborn teenager I was. My friends back then loved to do town hopping, ride motorcycles, and visit computer cafes to challenge Dota players. We would finish and head back around 2 or 3 in the morning. I lived on the outskirts of town, filled with rice fields and trees. There are no lampposts to illuminate the path ahead, and if you don't have a motorcycle, you walk. As I was heading back home, I was walking on the trail beside the rice fields, relying only on my phone's flashlight and from a full moon. I had no ounce of fear, knowing that there's no such thing as ghosts, but, well, I was wrong. While I was walking, I noticed something standing in the middle of the field, around 30 yards from the trail. It was wearing something pearly white, something like a gown or a robe. It was being blown by the wind. There was no way it could be a scarecrow, because there's no way a farmer had the crazy idea of letting a scarecrow wear something like what I was seeing. As I came closer to the figure, I realized that it was a woman, a white lady. By then I was sweating like bullets, and there was no other way around this thing, so I mustered all my courage and casually walked past it. The hair at the back of my neck was standing as if the ghost was following me with a gaze, and I dared not to look back. I was not an idiot to check to confirm my theory. So I just walked a little bit faster, because I remembered that if you run, these type of ghosts will chase you. Well, I was able to move along without any hiccups or jump scares. I thought it was all over, and the fearful encounter would have ended by then. But I was wrong again. I still had to walk a little farther before reaching my home, and on my left there were bamboo shoots and banana trees, basically the entrance to the woods. The light from the full moon could also not reach the trail I was heading to, so it was pitch dark, and the only light source I had, which was my phone, was about to die. I was walking a little faster now, hoping to reach our yard, which was around 100 meters, when suddenly, at the left corner of the trail, I saw something move. It couldn't be the carabao that my uncle tends, because I could make out that it was standing or floating on 2 legs. I thought to myself, is this a person? It could not be that ghost lady because she was wearing white, right? I was half right and half wrong. It was a ghost, all right, but it wasn't the white lady. It was a black lady. It was like a shadow of a woman with disheveled hair. Its eyes were bright red, like it was filled with rage. When I saw it, I bolted. I ran like Usain Bolt, reaching our doorstep in seconds. I banged on the door, waking up my grandmother and my uncle so that they let me in. When they finally did, I told them what I saw, but guess what they said to me? Serves you right. From then on, I stopped going home in the wee hours of the night. And if by chance I did, I would always have a friend drive me back home. Man in the Field by OK.5889. I work overnights at a 24-hour diner. You can probably guess what company. I'm used to weird people and odd things happening, but tonight was too much. The restaurant backs up to a field that has a tree line, and my cook and I went out back to smoke. We could hear someone yelling in the distance, but we get a lot of homeless people that come through town that usually are harmless, so we just shrugged it off as weird and went back inside. Later, I went out again to smoke and throw away some trash in the dumpster that's next to the field. It was stupid to go over to it, but I hadn't heard whoever that was out there again. As I was walking away from the dumpster, I heard, "Hey, come here! Hey, come here!" It was much closer than when we had heard him yelling the first time. I went inside and got my coworker, who owns a car with a spotlight on it, and we shined it out into the field, which, again, was not a smart move, and we admit that. But we couldn't see where he was, but he kept saying, "Hey, girl, come here." I called the cops by this point because it was just too fucking weird. As soon as I got off the phone with them, he came walking out of the field. He was an older man wearing a tan trench coat, and my coworker and a customer ran back inside because this dude was hauling ass across the parking lot. He started to come towards our door, and I called the cops again. My cook cut him off and told him that he needed to go, and the man was acting erratically, yelling at my cook and said, "I'll end your life the next time I see you, fucker." He kept moving his jacket by his waist like he was flashing a weapon, but I couldn't see anything from inside. The cops got him down the road, and an officer came by and basically said the guy was homeless and not mentally stable. No shit. We told them everything that happened, and my cook pressed charges on him. The officer told us that there wasn't anything they could do, and he wouldn't give her his name, so they let him go. Basically, it ended with, "Oh, by the way, he's known to carry a knife in his waistband. Call us if you need us. Bye." Well, he came back, again, hauling ass across the neighboring parking lot and back into the field. We could hear him screaming and yelling, "Hey, come here!" again and again. We got busy when the bars closed and didn't hear him yelling, but we knew he was still back there because we'd caught him sleeping around the dumpster before. My manager comes in the morning, and I'm going to try to get her to let me take a picture of him off the security tape so I can warn the other third shift workers. The field that he's camping out in also backs up to a middle school, but the cops said, again, there's nothing they can do. Hopefully he moves on and leaves us alone, or the cops can get him on something, and no one gets hurt. Cyberstalker Sent Me Death Threats by Chiquipa. Well, I decided I would share a story with you all. This happened back in 2019 through 2021, and it still sticks with me today. I'll be using fake names for myself and the man I'm talking about. Mary for me, Dennis for him. When I was 13, I met someone on Discord. He was funny, smart, and exactly my type. He was also 16. I don't know my logic with that being okay at 13, but I was stupid and naive. We became close friends, and after about 3 months of knowing him, I told him I had feelings for him. We then ended up dating. We lived across the country from each other, and we were basically just friends, but whatever. So, as we were dating, he started basically grooming me. As a kid who was always on the internet and was exposed to Kik also, I was used to this behavior and thought it was fine. He had me send nude photos, gross messages, and pretty much worship him. I wasn't allowed to talk to people on Discord without him there and stuff like that. He told me he would kill himself if I ever left, or how he was always on drugs because he was so sad. He also was incredibly racist and thought Nazi jokes were okay. I'm so mad at myself for not realizing that it wasn't okay back then. He ended up cheating on me with his ex and tossed me out of the door. Doesn't talk to me anymore and says we shouldn't talk anymore because we aren't together. And here's where it gets bad. This happened over 5 years ago, and I have spotty memory of this time. New accounts popped up in the server we met on. It was a server of mutual friends. And they started saying horrible things about me. Mary is a fat whale. Mary is an N-word, and more things of the sort. The accounts have names like Jerry Touches Kids or Big Fat Whale, etc. I'd gotten in trouble with the server owners because it was my fault that people were saying these things, like I had told them to spam things about me or something. The accounts also started messaging me to kill myself, die, how I was a whale, a whore, and more. I ended up blocking every account and moved on with my life, and just great, it was over with. Or so I thought. Fast forward a year to late summer of 2019. Everything started up again. The messages, him telling people lies and rumors, and direct threats. I was sent unsolicited porn, death threats, slurs, and that I should kill myself because no one cares. At that time, I had undiagnosed depression and anxiety, and I almost did kill myself. I went to therapy and tried to get over it. In 2020, right when the quarantine happened, I got a boyfriend. I was super happy and came back out of my shell. He and I would play games on Discord together, and I joined more servers. Around 2 months later, I got another message. Someone had messaged me named Lily, I believe. It was a normal profile, and we were in a server together, so I thought nothing of it. She then had messaged me how I was, and I had never talked to her before, so I was confused. She said that we had a long conversation about mental health the day before, so she wanted to make sure I was all right. And I asked who she was and what she was talking about, and she said something like, "Oh, you told me about this. You said you take medicine for schizophrenia and must have missed a dose. Are you off your meds?" I was extremely confused and scared because I've never talked to this person and certainly don't have schizophrenia. After about 10 minutes of this charade, I realized it was Dennis. I blocked the account and didn't accept new friend requests. The next day, I got hundreds of messages with the same contents I previously mentioned, the threats, porn, etc. I was so terrified I asked my boyfriend for help. He told me to make a new account and not friend any of the other mutual friends so Dennis couldn't find me. I did, which cost an affiliated Twitch account that I had spent years building. But I changed all my accounts, deleted most, and made new ones. The messages found me again. I have no idea how. These new accounts weren't tied to me. I got fed up and asked a mutual friend I thought I could trust some personal information about Dennis to go to the police and get a possible restraining order or something. I didn't totally know how the police handled these issues. Months went by and then nothing. Until the fall of 2021, in which Dennis messaged me calling me a stupid bitch and how he will always find me. How I'm so fat and dumb and no one loves me. So I isolated myself and deleted more accounts. I was never able to go to the police because I had no information like his full name or address. It's been 2 years, and every day I worry if he lives near me, if he knows where I live, or go to school. I recently found out he had a website and made YouTube videos. He's made YouTube videos referencing me in 2022. His copyright claim is something like Mary the Fat Whale Incorporated. I can't find it anymore, so I put the closest to what I remembered. This was hell, and I'm still worried every day that he will find me. I even believe he has a Reddit account and could find this. But I hope we don't meet again, Dennis. I wish you the worst. 13 and Left Home Alone by Glitter Return 326. I was 13 when this happened, and it still gives me nightmares thinking about it. My parents wanted to go out on a date night, so they left me home on a Friday night. I'm an only child, so I stayed home alone, and we had a one-story home with a daylight basement that had its own entrance. We live on a dead-end street that is pretty quiet in the evening, so not many cars come and go. My neighbors are pretty close to my house, too, so I didn't feel uncomfortable being home by myself. My parents left around 6 p.m. for their dinner reservation, and I had a nice hot pizza delivered and was ready to watch some scary movies all by myself. I was excited. I locked the door behind them and popped on the TV. I was scrolling through the movies on my Roku app and decided to watch one of the Halloween movies first. So I snuggled in my nice, warm, fuzzy blanket on the couch, got comfy, and began my night alone. About an hour passed, and I got up to use the bathroom. While in the bathroom, I thought I heard noises coming from the basement. It sounded like something was moving around, but I figured I was home alone. What could it be? so I brushed it off as nothing. I finished up in the bathroom and went back to my couch to finish the movie. Another 5 minutes passed, and again, moving noises in the basement. Now I started getting that nervous feeling in my gut. I stopped the movie to listen for more noises, and oh crap, what is that? I thought about that entrance door down there and wondered if it was locked. I assumed my parents had locked it, and I hoped they did. I didn't really know what to do. So I took a deep breath and decided to walk towards the basement and put my ear to the door. What a mistake. I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. And I froze in fear. This had never happened to me before. I'd been home alone in the past, but mostly during the day. I knew the obvious thing to do would be to call the cops. But did I do that? No. I ran outside and went to my neighbor's house and banged on their door. Thankfully, they were home and let me in. I was out of breath, scared, and couldn't get the words out fast enough. I asked them to please call the cops, that there was someone in my house. They called 911, and the cops came over within 10 minutes, and I also called my parents to let them know what was going on. I let the cops check out the house, and I stayed at my neighbor's where I felt safe. After some time, one of the cops came over to my neighbor's house and said they didn't find anyone in the house, but did say that whoever it was came in through the basement entrance. It must have been unlocked. Nothing was taken, and everything was in its place. My parents got home and, of course, were very upset and scared. The cops assured us the house was clear and to please lock our doors and windows at all times. They think this person saw my parents leave and assumed the house was empty. I don't want to think that this person knew I was home alone. After some thought, my mother said, "Oh, no, I don't think we locked the basement door. She just assumed since we lived in a quiet neighborhood we were safe, so she didn't really worry about it." But needless to say, after this night, we all made sure every door and window stayed locked. They still leave me alone, but they let the next-door neighbors know when they do, just in case. I still think about this night, and it gives me nightmares. I'm 16 now and feel a little uneasy being home alone, but I know I need to get over it. Please stay safe out there, and always lock your doors. You just don't know who is lurking around your neighborhood. A Strange Night Out, submitted by Jackson. The lake just outside of town where we had decided to take a drive was not the kind of place that you would consider a horrifying place to visit. I'd been to the lake many times and enjoyed myself on numerous occasions without the possibility of running into the supernatural. Many people lived around the lake in different areas in fine homes, and I doubt they had ever run into a problem that was unexplainable. But this night in 1979, there were 3 individuals that were terrified by what they encountered, and I was one of them. What took place was a very strange night out that included my sister, my best friend at the time, and me. Although we can all remember what we saw, none of us remember the month, date, or time of night that it occurred, though we do think it was after midnight. It was summertime, that much we know, but that's about all we can recall as to when it happened. My sister was up from Alabama visiting the family at the time, and that night just felt like getting out of the house. I decided to call my friend and see if he wanted to take a drive with us instead of sitting around doing nothing for another night. I mean, we really didn't have a plan. We just wanted to do something besides nothing. We were young and got bored easily, so a drive out to the lake seemed like a good idea at the time. Driving out of town, we headed north and decided to go by the lake and just relax by the water. Long before the internet came around, you actually had to go out into the world to have any chance at having fun, and we were hoping to find just that. But what we actually found was more of an adventure, though it was a small one. After a short drive, we came to a 2-lane turnoff and headed for the lake. After a short straightaway, we turned left at an old restaurant and started out on a road that circled the lake. As I drove, I asked the others if they had any particular destination in mind, and with a little discussion, it was decided to just keep driving around the lake and look for a suitable place to stop. I wasn't familiar with the roads that took us around the lake, but my sister remembered from when she used to live in the area, so she directed me, and we drove on, catching a glimpse of the lake through the trees as lights in and around the water shone off of it. The water was calm and smooth, like a giant mirror which often reflected the moon. There was an abundance of brush down by the water's edge in spots that were never used by anyone to access the lake, but we could still catch sight of the water quite often. Most of the trees between us and the lake cast shadows from the moon that glinted off the pavement as we continued our drive. It was a long way around, but it wasn't like we had anything else to do. We eventually came to a familiar area, even though it wasn't very well lit. When I was younger, I had come to the spot just to head on a church picnic, and since I knew where we were for the first time that night, I decided it would be as good a place as any to stop and walk down to the water. The sign next to the road announced where we were as we pulled into a half-circle gravel drive with a small place to park up against a line of large railroad ties lying end to end. The first strange occurrence happened as we were pulling into this area. There was another car pulling out, and though we did not see the license plate, we could plainly see that it was a gold Ford Mustang convertible with a black vinyl top. What struck us all as strange was that the car was peeling out of the gravel area as fast as the driver could make it move, throwing rocks and dust up into the air as if the car was on fire and they were trying to put it out with speed. When it hit the pavement of the road we had just left, it continued to pick up speed, burning rubber until it disappeared into the night. We never saw it again. At the time, we really didn't think too much of the situation other than the guy must be crazy to drive that wild. But we did think of it again when we left the area. I pulled the car up to the railroad ties, put it in park, and got out, followed by my friend and my sister. Then I ignorantly locked the doors, and the three of us proceeded to walk down towards the lake. As we were walking, we noticed what appeared to be a person wearing jeans and a white shirt of some kind, like that of a doctor or a chef's jacket, standing by the water. We decided to go down to the lake and maybe visit with him for a while. After all, we had no real plans for that night. In '79, we didn't worry too much about other people or that they might be a threat. And as it turned out, that person was someone or something we would never be able to reach. As we made our way to the lakeside, there was no conversation between us that I can remember. And after walking about 500 yards, give or take, we were still about several hundred from the water. At that point, we were startled as a line of what I can only call beings appeared from out of the darkness. We all stopped dead in our tracks and watched in awe at what lay in our paths. It was a full line of forms, all holding a single light, similar to a candle, and wearing robes that resembled the Grim Reaper. All three of us differed later about the color, but the robes I saw were white, and did not flow in the breeze, nor did their lights flicker at all. Their faces and hands were not visible, but they looked as solid as we were. The location that should have been their face was as black as the night, and their line in front of us looked formidable, as though they were prepared for battle. At first we just froze on the spot, not knowing what to make of the situation, but still realizing that fear would play a part in our adventure that night. We just stood there looking at something we could hardly believe as these things hovered about 1 foot to 1.5 feet off the ground. I would say it took no more than about 10 seconds for us to realize we might be in trouble. All their lights appeared to be suspended from an invisible hand and flicked on simultaneously from the group as a whole, and began to move towards us. As they started moving more rapidly towards us, we reacted as best we could by turning around to run back to the car. After a few steps of this, my sister lost her footing and fell to the ground, and I couldn't believe what was happening. I remember yelling at her to get up and hurry, or we would never see the next sunrise. My friend and I helped her up, and we were headed for the car as fast as our legs could carry us, while looking over our shoulders at the oncoming fright fest. I would say that watching behind us as we ran the other way was probably why my sister fell. To our horror, the creatures were following us with amazing speed, which came close to scaring us to death and made me believe we were not going to succeed in getting away. As my sister and I ran up to the driver's side of the car, my friend went to the passenger side. I pulled the keys from my pocket and couldn't believe it as I watched them fall from my hand onto the ground. After yelling some well-chosen descriptive word like shit at the thought of my own demise by reason of stupidity, I tried bending down to pick them up, but before I could reach them, my sister had already snatched them up and was unlocking the door. After some trouble getting the key in the slot, she finally got the door open. For some reason, I jumped in the back seat and unlocked the passenger door for my friend, sure that these creatures were going to close in before we could get away. Looking back on it, though, I'm not sure that they really wanted us to do anything but leave, and we were doing all we could to do just that. My sister was driving as we left the area like a bat out of hell, throwing dirt, dust, and gravel, and then burning rubber as we drove off into the distance, leaving whatever was far behind us in the darkness. When we felt we were far enough away to finally be safe, we all took deep breaths and started to talk all at once. After our discussion of what had just transpired, we remembered the gold Mustang that was leaving when we first arrived and how we had repeated its performance. We all agreed that we wished we could talk to the people in that car and share information because we figured our experiences would be very similar. But unfortunately, we never returned to search the area the next day or since that time, and with no inquiries, we never got any leads. All that we experienced that night continues to remain a mystery, as we have no idea what we encountered out there. And I, for one, have never heard anything even remotely similar. I've often wondered just how many people they chased off that night. And what were they? I know one thing for sure. If they were human with just a bunch of special effects out there to have some fun, then I'm sure they would have had a good laugh watching us run for our lives. I don't think I've ever had an experience that even comes close to that night's adventure, and if I hadn't had 2 witnesses, I wouldn't be telling anyone about it. We did have one minor difference of opinion. They saw robes of gray, whereas I saw white. But other than that, we could all agree that we never want to return there. I don't expect anyone to just believe what we barely lived through, but even with my imagination, I wouldn't have been able to make those things up. And I wasn't the only one who saw them that night, as there were 3 of us. Even the people before us saw the same beings that we did and ran for their lives the same way we did. Regardless of what you may think, I know what I saw, real or fabricated. It doesn't matter. We were still scared and ran from whatever it was, without regrets of finding out more. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode of Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. If you have a true scary story of any nature that you'd like to hear narrated on my podcast or channel, email it to unclejoshtruescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Follow me on social media. All the links to that are in the description below. And if you want to take it a step further, find my Patreon link down there too, or think about buying some Uncle Josh Campfire Crew merchandise. A link to my TeePublic storefront is down there as well. Everyone, be excellent to each other. And until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.